Mike. Hey, Mike, how are we doing back there? His name's Mark. It's all right. I call my kids the wrong names all the time. In fact, she's not here. Oh, I wanted to pick on her. She's in back. But Danielle, our daughter, is here. Came up to me one time. She was about this big, and she comes up to me, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. I says, Danielle, you just called me Mommy. She goes, well, you call me Rebecca all the time. And she was right. I did. Anyways. Genesis. We're going to go back to 42 again. Genesis 42. All right? No, we aren't going back there again. You are going back there. Yeah, that's okay. Genesis 42. Again, to set it up, to get it in context, right? Where were we? All right, there's a famine in the land. Pharaoh had a dream, and Joseph interpreted that dream that God was giving a message that there was going to be 7 years of bounty or bumper crop, right? And then 7 years of famine. So they laid aside grain and all kinds of produce for 7 years, so that when the famine hit, Egypt was prepared. Chapter 42, verse 1. I take a week off and I get all excited and it just log jams in my head. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look at one another? And he said, indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die. Okay. Not a whole lot of theology here, okay, but understand. One thing I love about reading the scriptures, particularly the Old Testament, is understanding how little human beings have changed over the years. You right? You know? And we look at this, and Jacob looked at his sons, and he says, why do you look at each other? In essence, Bloomquist paraphrase, why are you standing around looking stupid? Do something, right? He's like, why are you standing around looking at each other? Why do you look at one another? He says, indeed, I've heard there's grain in Egypt. Go down there to that place and buy for us there that we may live and not die. And it's just in that sense, get up off your duff and go and do something. Because if not, just standing around, what's going to happen? We're all going to die. All right? All right.
The brothers didn't know that Joseph was there, did they?
That is correct. They did not. They did not. Okay. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. Wait a minute. How many brothers were there? 12. So what do we know about this?
They kept the youngest one.
They kept the youngest one behind. His name was? Benjamin. Why did they keep Benjamin behind?
His dad didn't want him to take him.
Because after Joseph was gone, Benjamin was now
The only one.
the golden child. The only one son of Rachel. Rachel. Well, Leah isn't in our name, but that's okay. But anyways, Rachel, his favorite wife, right? Okay. Remember Jacob inherited the family trait of playing favorites, right? Okay, so he had a favorite wife, which really sounds awkward, but he had a favorite wife and he had favorite sons. Okay? And Benjamin was the new golden child, favorite son, so they left him behind. All right? But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin. Where did that come from? Benjamin. That's the Greek of Benjamin. I'm lying through my teeth. Oh boy. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Okay? Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. Now this is part of the setup. Joseph is now Pharaoh's right-hand man, right? And remember, the phrase that sticks in my head that Pharaoh said to Joseph was, Only when it comes to the throne will I be greater than you. In essence, in essence, he's saying basically, in title only, well, not in title only, but only when it comes to actually being king of the land, ruler of the land, will I be greater than you. Otherwise, you have a free reign, okay? He is truly that right-hand man. And Joseph, verse 6, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. All right? Fulfilling that dream. Remember the dream? Okay? Fulfilling that dream. And remember the dream was twofold as well, right? Remember the dream was twofold? Okay? And how many times do his brothers come to him? Twice. We're going to find that as we come along. Okay? Yeah. He told one part, and he also said, well, that's not all. And he told his father, and that's when his father chewed him out. Okay? Because, anyways, we'll get to that as we go down the road. But anyways, so Bob, imagine what he's feeling right now, Joseph's feeling right now. Okay? Imagine, if you will, I mean, what would you be feeling? You're there. You know God's hand is on everything you've done, right? Not that you're doing it all so well, but simply that you're being blessed by God, right? So he's faithful. He ends up the right-hand man in all of Egypt, which, by the way, was a world power at that time. It wasn't just a inconsequential country. It wasn't, but it was a world power, and he's a number 2 man. But still, you're separated from your family, right? And your brothers walk in. Now think about this. Because this is your brothers, right? I mean, I got brothers. Most of us, I'm sure, have brothers, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have family squabbles. Every family has them, right? But at the end of the day, they're still brothers. But yet, then again, my brothers never threw me in a pit and then sold me into slavery. I'm sure they wanted to. But they never did anything like that. So he sees these guys come in. They're his brothers. So I can't imagine. I know if it was me, you'd have that heartfelt joy at seeing your brothers again and wondering, where's Dad? Right? And then again, looking at him goes, those lousy sons of guns. Right? I mean, you got that whole mixed feelings going on there, right? Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. When I say he had to have mixed feelings, I do believe his joy overrode his fear or want for retribution rather quickly, because he wanted to test them, and we're going to see that shortly. He wanted to test them to make sure, what is their hearts like? Now, Scripture doesn't really tell us what they would have done if they would have failed the test, but they passed it, if that makes sense. I'm foreshadowing the story here a little bit, but that's okay, right? Well, I hope so, because I've already done it. All right. He saw his brothers, recognized them, but he acted as a stranger and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. When spoke roughly to him, being the number 2, in essence, the way I take that is he basically, he didn't want to give it away. He didn't want to say, hey guys, it's me, No, he just, spoke like the ruler of a world power would speak to these strangers that walk in to buy food, So, what do you want? And where are you from? Kind of like I am in the morning before my coffee. No, I'm really not like that, but I won't say who is. All right. Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And to their credit, have you ever met somebody and it's somebody you knew even very well and you didn't recognize them, but as soon as you found out who they were, you're like, how can I miss it? But if you're not looking for it, Sometimes I got the world's worst story about that, and it's my own son. My own son. You've seen him since he's back to town, right? First off, in my defense, the kid has grown 6.5 inches, right? And he's grown up. But he walked in the room, and I thought he was one of my daughter's friends. And I was like, why is my wife hugging one of my daughter's friends? God's honest truth.
And I knew who it was.
She knew who it was. And as soon as he started talking, I'm like, that voice sounds familiar. It was my son. And I had to go to him and say, I am so sorry, but I did not recognize you. And not only did he grow 6.5 inches, but he lost like 40 pounds. So he looks complete and got a haircut. That alone threw me for a loop, you know? But anyways, if you're not looking for someone, sometimes you can just flat out miss it.
And another, if you're used to seeing people in a certain uniform, and then you see them in street clothes, that changes things too.
Or in a setting, in a different. You're used to seeing them in a certain setting, and you see them something different. Like, yeah, I get that. So to their credit, Joseph, the guy they threw in the pit and sold into slavery, is now all in Egyptian garb and sitting in a position of great, not just a little bit, but great authority, right? So they walk in. He's the last person they're expecting to see. So even though he's right in front of them, they're just missing it, right? Okay. So Joseph recognized his brothers, verse 8, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them, and he said to them, okay, hold on. He remembered the dreams, okay, and he's like, okay, it's being fulfilled. And he says to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. Why is he saying, it's pretty obvious what he's saying. Why is he saying that? Why is he turning to his brother saying, you are spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land. In essence, you come to spy out our weaknesses.
Is he trying to see their heart yet?
He's still trying. Yes, he is doing all this to test their hearts, see where they're at. I also feel he's still struggling a little internally, right? But we'll get to the point where he's really testing them, okay? But he's setting them up for that, okay? He didn't jump up and just say, like I said earlier, he didn't jump up and say, guys, it's me, because well, first off, they probably would have fainted dead away. I know I would have, but he wanted to see if they have changed. We all change, right? I'm not the same man I was. I'm not the same man I was 6. I'm not the same man I was last week. It's just we all change, right? But that's what he's waiting to see. So he says he calls them spies, right? And they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." Okay. How do you think Joseph took that phrase, "we are honest men"? Maybe not so much, right? Okay. I tend to think Joseph is really getting torn up inside right now, because now bear in mind, God has been working on him for a few years now, and he has changed. He used to be the arrogant teenage boy that flaunted his golden child status, and now he really is in tune and trying to honor God, right? And God is favoring him and blessing him. And so I can't imagine he's not struggling mightily inside right now, because what is the godly response here? I mean, if you were faced with this kind of a situation, if you've ever been wronged, forgiveness, but yes, there is no but. Forgiveness is the godly response, but Forgiveness most certainly is the godly response. There really is no but to that. However, I see how I get around that? Instead of a but, I have a however. However, even as godly people, we want to be careful. God calls us to forgive. He never tells us to forget. Does that make sense? In other words, if somebody wrongs you horribly, okay, you can forgive them. You should forgive them. God tells us to forgive them. But they're not going to babysit my kids. Does that make sense? All right? If someone wrongs you horribly, forgive them, absolutely. But you still have to be careful until you know for sure that they've changed. Does that make sense? And you say, well, that's really not forgiveness. Well, no, it is. I can forgive someone, and by forgiving, we once went to a class on forgiveness, and my one takeaway from it was said half in joke, but it's really true. If you can get to the point where you can pray for somebody that deeply, deeply hurt you, you can pray for them, and that prayer doesn't involve a runaway bus, you're approaching forgiveness. That was, like I said, he said it half in joke. But the point is, if you really can pray for them and pray for their greater good, then you're approaching forgiveness. But again, God never tells us to forget. He has promised that he will cast our sins as far as the east is from the west, but he just tells us to forgive. Okay? So I think Joseph also is trying to see their heart to make sure that whether or not they really changed. Right? He hasn't seen them in a while. He doesn't know what's going on in their lives. So, and they said, your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. Okay? They kind of answer a question that wasn't asked. Right? You ever been told in life when you go for a job interview or some kind of promotion interview, and they always tell you, don't offer any information. Answer the questions, but don't go beyond that and offer any more information. Why is that?
Some might not be positive, or it might not even offer.
It's just, if you're offering more information than what they're asking, you're just giving them more ammo to dig deeper, and it's just, but that's what they're doing right there. Is they're offering, he is accusing them of being spies. And right now they're stammering and stuttering and saying, look, no, we're just 12 brothers. One's at home with dad, the other one's dead. We're all honest people, I think that is born out of guilt, nervousness, or before there, all the above. Okay? By the way, if you got any questions, you feel free to pop off with them, except unless your name is Elwood. Verse 14, but Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. Excuse me. In this manner, you shall be tested by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. Okay? So they prattled on about there are 12 brothers, one's at home and one is dead, and he immediately challenges them on that by saying, you know what? One of you is going to go home and get your brother, the rest are staying here. So you can prove what you're telling me is true. Okay? Now he knows there's another brother. Right? But he's playing it off like he's testing their integrity.
But he just really wanted to see his
Well, how did he know there was another brother?
He knows his own brothers, yeah.
But the guys are going to question him about, how do you know we got another brother?
They said it. They said that they said there's 12 of us. One's at home with dad and the other one is dead. They said that. Okay.
I didn't read that.
That's okay. Yeah. All right. So verse 17. So he put them all together in prison 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house. But you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses." Do you see a little bit of softening? Do you see a little bit of softening there? What was his first command?
That one of them go.
One of them goes, everybody stays. They've been in jail for 3 days, now what?
Now they're going to just keep one.
One stay behind, the rest go and take grain. Okay? The other thing, do you catch anything else in what Joseph says? What should have been a clue to the brothers if they would have been paying attention.
That he fears God.
That I fear God. And it should be capitalized.
It is.
All right? And when it's capitalized in the Hebrew, it's talking about Jehovah God, not one of the many false gods of Egypt. He was telling them he fears the God of Abraham, the same God they serve.
And should that have been a clue also in the sense that pharaohs didn't believe the God of Abraham?
Exactly. That should have been a clue that he was not Egyptian. Right? And if he was not Egyptian, you would have thunk one of them would have stepped back and said, well, if he's not, he serves the same God we do. It would have made my wheels turn. Then again, I probably wouldn't have been so excited to think had a 1 in 10 chance of going home. No, 1 in 10. 9 out of 10 chance of going. Never mind. Anyways, math was never my strong suit. So Joseph said, I already read the part. Verse 20, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified and you shall not die. And they did so. Okay? Then they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother. For we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. Very much the cause and effect mentality, right? God does discipline his children. Never forget that. God does discipline his children. However, not every evil that befalls godly people is because of our disobedience. Sometimes it's just the evil in the world, right? Okay? But they're looking at this, and somebody pipes up and says, look, we knew what we did to Joseph was wrong. I'm very loosely paraphrasing here. We knew what we did to Joseph was wrong, and we did it, and now this is happening to us. Right? And Reuben answered them saying, and this is the oldest is always like this, you know.
Yeah, we're good.
You're the oldest, aren't you? That's why I looked at you. The oldest is always like this. Reuben answered saying, did I not speak to you saying, do not sin against the boy? That's Reuben. I told you so. Right? Did I not speak to you saying, do not sin against this boy? And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. Okay? But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. That he turned himself away from them and wept. Why is he weeping?
He loves them. Yeah. His heart finally softened towards them.
Yeah.
He's seeing that they're feeling bad about what they did.
Yeah, if it was me, strictly, if this was me and in this scenario unfolded before me, it would have touched my heart to hear one of the brothers say, you know, it's because we did this to Joseph. This is happening to us. We knew it was wrong, et cetera, et cetera. But it would have touched me exponentially more to hear Reuben say, I told you not to do that. Because he would have known someone would have been fighting for him all the way back then, because he had to feel abandoned by all of them when he was sold into slavery, right? But to find out that at least one of them was fighting for him, that would have touched me more than anything, right? Then he turned himself away from them and wept, and he returned to them again and talked with them. He took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. Okay, so they didn't even pay for the grain, right? He gave them their money back. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. What would you think he felt? Open it up to feed the donkey, and there's money.
Maybe that they were being set up.
Or just, oh no, what happened? Something is not right. Yeah, something's not right. Okay? People just don't do that, right? It's just something, I don't know if you would have felt they were being set up, or if you would have felt there was just some kind of error, an accounting error, I don't know how you have an accounting error, but you get my point. Just some kind of mistake. Accounting error.
Maybe they were testing them to see if they would report this mistake.
And I think that's probably would have been the way I would have defaulted. Is he's already challenged us. Joseph, they didn't know he's their brother, but he's already challenged us about being spies and not telling the right story of what we're here for. So maybe this is just part of that, okay? So he said to his brothers, verse 28, my money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, they were afraid, saying to one another, what is this that God has done to us? Okay? Now, I don't know about anybody else. Okay? My default isn't to blame God when bad things happen to me. No. And it's not because I'm a good person. It's a different mindset back then than we have today. Okay? By him saying, what is this that God has done to us? He's not saying God is trying to kill us. What he's saying, though, is God has allowed this. Why hasn't God intervened to make this more smooth for us? Okay? So they went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that happened to them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. So we know it's one thing they did not do. What was that one thing they did not do? They did not go back and return the money. But they went to Dad. Okay? Hopefully Dad has some wisdom. What do we do? But we said to him, we are honest men and we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your households and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me so I shall know that you are not spies. Okay, I'm not going to go back and look. Did they tell him, the youngest? Well, he says here that he said, go get your youngest brother. When they said, we are 12, one is home with Dad and one is dead, did they tell him he was the youngest? I don't think so. I don't think so. But they're telling Dad, bring your youngest brother to me so I shall know you're not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land.
In my King James Version, it does say, and behold, the youngest is this day with our father.
There you go. Okay. See, that's why
What verse is that?
13.
we keep going back to 13, don't we?
We keep going back to that one. We didn't listen to that one.
Right.
Obviously.
Yep, that's what it says.
Well, that's pretty bad. You may not have been listening, but I wasn't either, and I read it. All right, verse 35. And it happened that as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly, each man's bundle of money was in the sack. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but if one brother found money in the top of his sack? I'm checking my sack. I'm checking my sack. They didn't. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob, their father, said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more." He's already writing Simeon off. He's writing him off. "And you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." Again, Reuben stepping up and saying what? I will take care of it. Okay? Yeah, that's, a little strong, I would have offered him a couple of calves, but, he was pretty confident. But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead and he is left alone." See, Jacob still has that issue, does he not? He has not gotten over this. "If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." Okay? Bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Basically, it's going to kill me. It's going to kill me. Okay? So, the story of Jacob, both as a young man and all the way through adulthood and into an old man, there's a lot to it, a lot of wonderful, godly aspects to it, but there's that thread of favoritism that poisons so much of what he does, right? Many of us have experienced that in our own lives, I'm sure, okay? Whether it be family or even in a work center, it doesn't matter, but you see that played out sometimes if some people are favored over others, and that really does poison relationships, poisons families, and that's unfortunately part of the story of Jacob, all the way up into his old age. He is prepared to give up Simeon just to maintain Benjamin, because he is the son of his favorite wife. So he's now his favorite child, right? When he's been promised to get them both back. And he says, "Nope, not good enough. I'm keeping one, the other one's gone." Right? That's pretty rough. Yeah, that's pretty rough, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Questions, comments on chapter 42?
On my notes, in the King James for the 42:15, it says, "Joseph was testing his brothers to make sure that they had not been as cruel to Benjamin as they had been to him." And, it goes on more, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting concept too, of thinking that, testing to see if they're doing the same thing they did to him, to the youngest brother.
Because they were both children of Rachel. Yeah. Quite possible. Anything else? If not, let's close in prayer and we'll start our time of fellowship. Thank you, Lord, for this time together this morning. Thank you for your word.